Sunday, Eagles, Vikings. Let's take a look at it. Baldy's breakdowns. You can use that hashtag on Twitter and follow Brian Baldinger at Baldy NFL from the NFL Network. Brian Baldinger joins us now with a look a little closer at how these two teams match up in the NFC Championship. Baldy, these two teams, very similar teams. Backup QBs, offenses that don't get a lot of credit, and very good defenses. Welcome back, pal.
Yeah, thanks, guys. No, it's a pretty good estimate of what to see. It's going to come down to mistakes and who makes them and who capitalizes on them. That's usually what happens in these type of games. But two really well-coached teams and two teams that kind of got through the divisional rounds by the skin of their teeth. One by a miracle and one by an elite star player kind of slipping on the biggest play of the game. So I think both can feel a little bit fortunate that they're here. But at the same time, their defenses did a good job of keeping them in the game and allowing them to win it at the end.
Let's start with the Eagle offense, Baldy, and get your take on what you liked from them. I know they only scored 15. They didn't score a lot, but they got the job done. What could they carry over from that game to be successful against? This is a better defense. You talked about it last week, how the Atlanta defense very sticky in the secondary, but this secondary is probably better.
Yeah, they're better. They're better all the way around. They're better at linebacker. They've got more experience. I think they, they've been together a longer period of time, more veteran players. Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks been playing together now for, about 3 or 4 years, and Everson Griffin been around, and Harrison Smith is, a household name. He's, they're just better players. And they've been together. And I think the system that Mike Zimmer runs is, pretty – they're pretty good. They blitz well, and they take a lot of things away. They make you really earn things. Drew Brees got hot in the fourth quarter. Otherwise, they really shut, New Orleans down. But, when I look at it, I think it just comes down to the defensive fronts. The Eagles' defensive front was just dominant the other day. And, you hold that Falcon offense to 10 points and all that. That's where it all starts for Philadelphia. And I think that's what, that's their bell cow. They've been pacing those guys all year long, and now it's time. And so I think those guys understand that it's time, and it's time to play every snap. And I think they're up to the task. I think they want to play every snap. And so Fletcher and Brandon and Vinny, and Jernigan, I think you're going to see a lot of snaps out of those guys.
Brian Baldinger with us as we talk about Eagles, Vikings, and the big NFC Championship game that's going to take place at Lincoln Financial Field on Sunday. That's the late game. Now, Baldy, the Eagles ran it 32 times last week. Not a ton of success, but they did run it. I'm in the elevator at the Trop today coming down, and the guy sees the ESPN sign and just starts saying, I know how to win the game. Run the ball. Run the football. That's what the guy in the elevator is telling me. How important was that for them to at least be able to move the ball, show that they could move the ball, maybe not touchdowns, but extend drives and get points?
Well, it's who they are. That's what they got to do this week, too. This is the number 2 run defensive football. The Eagles are number 1. But that's what they got to do. They've got, 3 230-plus pound backs, and they got to keep just chopping wood, and try to figure out ways to kind of pop 1 or 2, and try to stay on schedule and do their RPOs off of it and the play action and kind of manage the game like that. But I expect to see, 3 tight ends on the field quite a bit and, try to tilt the field and put the numbers in their favor. Look, they've got a Pro Bowl right side of the offensive line, and Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson played like it the other day. And, they got to lean on those guys. Big V played his best game as an Eagle. They got to lean on their big front and their ability to play together and the way that they can fit their tight ends in with them.
We all know how good the Vikings defense is, Baldy, but is there an area of that Vikings D that Doug can get innovative and go after?
Well, we've got to see if this Andrew Zendejo can play. He got knocked out of the game the other day. He's a real important piece to what they do. They're really interchangeable at safety with Harrison Smith and Zendejo, and he's their second leading tackler. Look, I think, Anthony Harris is his backup. He came in, made a big stop on 3rd down the other day. But, anytime you can get to the depth chart, on a defense, I think you could do that. I think, let's just see what Tommy Johnson, can do, at defensive tackle. He's their 3 technique. He was a guy that at one point was playing for Jaws' arena team here, the Philadelphia Soul. Do they really think like he's a big-time 3 technique defensive tackle? I would imagine that they'll try to test him. and try to, probably fit Brandon Brooks on him at some point. So Linval Joseph is a stud. He's a very, very good nose tackle. But no, I think if there's a weakness, I think it's at that 3 technique.
Baldy, we saw him, Doug, call back-to-back screens. That was something that he kind of talked about, in the press conference this week. And, we didn't see them do a whole heck of a lot of that. The screen game was not something they excelled in or did a whole heck of a lot this year. But is that something that they can implement again this week? Is that something you talked about, maybe activating Smallwood last week because he is maybe the best guy for them in that screen game? But do you think the screen game is an area where they can get Minnesota this week?
It can be. I think they've got better linebackers than Atlanta. We'll see. They play a lot more man coverage, and that's a good thing to do against a team that plays man coverage. So, get those guys with their backs running to them, and get one of your guards or get Kelsey out there in front and pick off the guy covering the back, whether it's Anthony Barr or whether it's Eric Kendricks. And try and get that kind of a matchup. They were 5 for 5 throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage last week, and a lot of those were screens. And so, look, it's easy completions. When you can screen to Jay Ajayi and go for 32 yards behind, Stefan Wisniewski and Kelsey, that was the biggest play of the game for him. So I expect him to try it. I don't think Minnesota has as much speed on defense as Atlanta does. I don't think they have quite the same pass rushers. And so that's what you try to slow them down and try to take away their speed with that. So I think Minnesota's a little bit more disciplined than what Atlanta plays.
Hey, Baldy, I want to flip to the Vikings' weak spot, their offensive line. Now, you know a lot about offensive line play, so is this an area where the Eagles have a clear advantage and they can really take advantage of Minnesota, the Eagles' D-line against the Vikings' offensive line?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the Eagles dominated Atlanta, right?
Yeah, they did, and I think absolutely. Rashad Hill is pretty new at right tackle, and Remmers was the right tackle. He's at left guard. They're trying to go with their 5 best players right now due to some injuries. But, Riley Reif is a guy that has been in this league a long time. He's a tough guy, but I don't think he's an elite left tackle. I think you got a rookie center who's played real well and started all year long, Pat Elflein, and at times, he's played well beyond his rookie years. And so I think there's certain matchups there. But I think it starts with Rashad Hill. I think if you're Brandon Graham up there and you're watching and studying, what Rashad Hill can do, I think you got to think that you can win that matchup pretty consistently.
Yeah, Baldy, Fletcher Cox, he dominated last week. Is he going to be in a situation where he will be able to take advantage of again? Because last week he was matched up with a backup left guard in Garland. Will he be in a similar spot where I thought Fletcher just absolutely disrupted the Atlanta offense and maybe even got them out of their game plan?
Well, I don't know if they got him out, but he's definitely affected Matt Ryan, even if he didn't hit him that much. They got the 1 sack. But, they're going to move him around. They have played him over the right guard. They like to play him over the center, and especially in shotgun where he's got to get the snap back, and then he's got to deal with Fletcher. And, they love to put, those 4 defensive ends out there, or 4 number 1 draft picks, and Fletcher and Brandon and Long, along with Derek Barnett. They love to put that group out there and let them just tee off and go. So I think you'll see Fletcher up and down the line of scrimmage. I think you'll see him over against Remmers. I think you'll see him against Berger. I think you'll see him against Elflein. And really try to get him matched one-on-one, let him just collapse the pocket the way he just physically is capable of doing.
Now, they hit Matt Ryan 11 times last week, very disruptive. One thing that Case Keenum can do more than Matt is get out of there. He can move around a little bit, but that is where Keenum is either good or sometimes he can make mistakes. So it seems that the Eagles' defensive front is again going to be really the key because they can either rattle Keenum or force him into mistakes.
Well, I think you got to, I think you could do both. I think, by rattling him, you could force him into mistakes. He just hasn't been in this atmosphere. He just hasn't seen this front. He just hasn't seen a team that rushes the passer every play and how disruptive that can be to anything that you're trying to do. And perceived pressure sometimes is just as effective as real pressure. And we got to see if he's reading the rush, dropping his eyes. If he's moving to escape the pocket and he's dropping his eyes, they've got him right where they want him. Now, if he can move and maneuver within the pocket and keep his eyes down the field to find Thielen or Diggs or Rudolph, whoever it is, then that's something to look for as a fan, and just see how he's maneuvering within the pocket.
Eagles 6-2 in their last 8 games versus Minnesota. Baldy, Adam Thielen and Diggs, they're both very good receivers. How do the Eagles handle those guys?
Well, they moved Thielen around a lot. Last week he was pretty invisible in the first half when Lattimore was locked up on him, and they didn't really go to him. And then they got him off. They've got him out of their game by running a lot of man beaters, and they got Diggs open early in the game on some crossers, and they really picked Ken Crawley, and so they got him kind of backed off and into some more zone, and that's when they kind of started opening it up to Thielen. So, Shermer's going to be real tuned into it, seeing where they're playing, and what their plan is right now. So, Thielen is, as everybody saw last week, he's one heck of a good football player. I mean, he can. To beat Marshawn Lattimore a couple of times like he did, I didn't see Julio Jones or Mike Evans. I didn't see anybody do that to him. To see him go up and get the ball the way he did, and he's just a really, really good football player. You saw Jarris Wright make some plays, and we haven't seen really Jarris Wright make many plays in the last couple of years. So, and then you gotta worry about McKinnon coming out of the backfield and the things that they do to him. So they've got more than enough weapons. They've got more than enough. And third downs, they're looking for Thielen. I mean, he's second in the league in catches on third downs with 33. They hit him on a couple thirds in the second half last week. I mean, he's the guy that you got to really concentrate on locking up. But, Ronald Darby showed and Jalen Mills both showed that they're capable of playing really good football at a high level last week. That Jalen Mills was all over the field. He's a great tackler. I mean, he made a coverage where he covered I forget exactly. I think it was I'm trying to remember exactly the receiver at the time. But he covered a receiver all the way across the field last week and then defended the pass. It was Sanu, and he defended Sanu. I mean, he must have covered him for 80 yards last week. And they got sticky, and they got sticky all the way to the end. And, you look at what Darby did on that first fade route to Julio Jones. I mean, that was a good job of manning up against Julio there with a chance to go win the game. So they came up big at the very end when they had to.
Brian Baldinger with us, breaking down the Eagles and the Vikings NFC Championship game. Baldy, I think you and I have talked off the air before about the decade that I spent in Nebraska, and I covered the college football team out there. Tom Osborne was the coach. He used to always, his press conferences were like set your watch. He'd talk offense, he'd talk defense, and then he never called it special teams. He always called it the kicking game, right? Yeah. And our kicking game. But that's an issue, right? The Eagles special teams, the Vikings special teams. I know Doug Peterson talked this week about how they focused on special teams. Is that something that could change the outcome of the game on Sunday?
Well, it can, and it will. I mean, this Ryan Quigley, the punter for the Vikings now, he's punted 71 times this year for the Vikings, and he hasn't had one touchback. That tells me that, if you look at his net punting average, he's last in the league, but, he drops a lot of punts inside the 10-yard line. And, he had one tip last week, and so that's something to look at. And Brian Brayman from the Eagles was real close to getting one last week. So, you look at, the Eagles kicking game. They missed an extra point last week, missed a field goal. I mean, those are things that, you can't do when you get to January. So
kicked one out of bounds.
Kicked one out of bounds. They gave the field position to the 40-yard line. So the kicking game is always a part of the game. There's a lot of snaps in it. There'll be at least 30 snaps in the kicking game. We'll see how many returns there are. We'll see what the wind is like and how that affects the kicking game and the punts and all that kind of stuff. So, it's an area that you can swing field position, hidden field position. A lot of penalties in the kicking game. We'll see. Ed Hockley is the referee in this game. And he pushes in the backs. I mean, you start against any of these defenses, you start inside your own 10-yard line. That's a long, hard day to go the length of the field against either one of these defenses.
Yeah. And, of course, the big question, are we going to get Kenyon Barner a smaller mouthpiece so he can spit it out and yell, Peter, 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 or poison, poison, poison?
Is that play on him? Is that play on Barner?
I saw him waving his arms. Now, how vocal he was, I didn't see Rasul Douglas move. I didn't see Brayman move. Look, it's loud out there. I didn't know if I wasn't there, so I don't know if you could hear it or not, but it didn't look like anybody reacted to it, and so that was a deadly mistake. I mean, that's how the Falcons got their only touchdown of the game on that short field at the 18-yard line. So I'm sure they've worked on it all week. This guy's gonna put the ball in the field of play where, it's either going to be fair caught or it's going to be, it's going to be short. He's not going to kick it into the end zone. So, there's going to be a play on the ball if you're around it and you're not careful.
Brian Baldinger at Baldy NFL, at Baldy NFL on Twitter. Hashtag Baldy breakdowns from all of the action. And Baldy, when you watch Case Keenum, the numbers are very good. They're obviously winning with him. What is it about him that concerns you if you're the Eagles? Because the Eagles' rush defense, you would assume, is going to be up to the task. And if they can't run the ball and it comes down to Case Keenum, what is it about Keenum that would concern you?
Well, he's been poised. He's been very poised this year, and he's made a lot of big throws. I mean, he's played basically the whole season. He's turned it over 7 times. He lost 1 fumble. He threw 7 interceptions on the whole season. So he's done a good job of taking care of the football. Now, he threw one last week that he'd like to have back and allowed the Saints to get back in the game. But, by and large, over, 14-plus games, he's turned it over a total of 8 times. He's been very diligent with the ball. And, it's clear that him and Pat Shurmur have a good relationship. And he looks like a guy, he played a lot of football at Stephenville High School under Art Briles. He played for Art at Houston, him and Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, he's played a lot of football, and he's played the quarterback position, especially in shotgun, a great deal. So I think he's got a lot of confidence in who he is and what he can do. He's got a really good football team around him. He knows that. He knows how valuable field position is, how valuable how costly turnovers are. And so I think he understands, really how the game is played and what the quarterback position needs. And he seems to have provided that, throughout the season.
Baldy, of course, the Eagles and the Vikings of the NFC game. Give us a quick thought on that AFC. The Jaguars, they put up 45 last week. I think people said, okay, I think they can win, but they would win because of their defense. Well, they won because they scored 45. Their defense gave up 42. What do they do this week against New England?
Well, they went to San Francisco in Week 16, and Jimmy Garoppolo absolutely carved them up. They were, I think he was 11 for 15 on 3rd downs. And that's against that defense that went in there ranked number 1 in almost every single category in the NFL. And they came out with their heads between their legs, and they played them all. I mean, they played all their starters. But Garoppolo beat them with accuracy and speed of decision-making. And that's exactly what Brady does to you. And so they're going to get tested. The ball's going to come out quick. They got a ton of guys. I mean, Rex Burkhead might be up this week, but if he isn't, Deion Lewis, James White, Amendola. They got these guys Chris Hogan, they got these guys that can just win inside a phone booth, and they can win quickly. And so it's going to be the short passing game that they're going to have to deal with. And, the one thing about Tom Brady, he's got 17 years of experience in this offense, and everything is up. Whatever route combination, whatever personnel grouping he feels, can best attack what Jacksonville is doing, then that's what he's going to do. Like, they got off to a slow start last week. It was 7-0 in the second quarter, and then he figured out what Tennessee was doing, and then it was over. Then next thing he looked up, it was 35 points. So he does, as the game goes on, he can absolutely feel what you're doing, where you're going to be, and then they counter to it. So I'm just not going to go. I know Tom Brady injured his hand at some level yesterday, but until I see that hand come out in a bandage and wrapped up, I'm just going to believe that he's going to be the same Tom Brady that we're used to seeing in January.
At Baldy NFL on Twitter, follow him and use the hashtag Baldy Breakdowns for the video of the key plays in each game every single week. Baldy, we always appreciate it, pal. Thanks so much.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Take care now. Enjoy the game.